what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben, and I've always been dead set against lowering any sort of vehicle that is intended for off-road travel. I rode both my Gen 2 and Gen 3 XR650 in the stock height configuration, as did I with the 10RA700, all very, very heavy bikes, 460 pounds right off the factory floor. So I figured when it came to the 37-inch seat height on the much lighter 350-pound XR650L, even though I can't really get to the ground very well, I figured there was no reason that I shouldn't be able to make do. But then I traded my Gen 3 XR650 for this much lower DR650, and I'm less interested in the seat height of this bike and more interested in the fact that because it has a much lower center of gravity, it actually handles much better for 95% of the riding that I'll do. And while 12 inches of ground clearance is certainly enticing, the 10 inches of clearance that the DR650 has never really been an issue. And honestly, in any situation that I can think of where I would actually need to use that amount of ground clearance to, say, hop over a log, I would much rather do it on a bike that I can more easily get to the ground on, rather than one that has the ground clearance maybe to make it over, but also has a high enough seat that I would never be able to catch myself if I fell. And I know, if you ride like you're ready to fall, then you're probably going to, but the thing is, I'm not a professional rider, and this bike seems to fit my needs much, much better than the ridiculous seat height of the XR. And the cool thing about the Hemisphere off-road kit is that the side stand that you get with it is completely adjustable. So right now I've got it all the way down. So it's essentially the same length as the stock side stand, just with a much, much larger foot. But since we're lowering the bike, we will of course want to shorten the side stand. It looks like we can do that by about 1.5 inches with some adjustability in between. And the lowering link itself is also really pretty neat. We've got a center portion here that is threaded regular on one side and threaded in reverse on the opposite. So essentially we'll be able to fasten this to the bike by the stock bolts, and of course got these little spacers here that will go on either side. And then once it's installed on the bike, all you have to do is loosen up the locking nuts and turn this, and it will extend the link itself, so you can go anywhere from 1 inch of drop all the way up to 2. And of course then if you change your mind, all you have to do is crank it back the opposite direction, tighten up the locking nuts, and you're ready to ride. So huge thanks to Hemisphere Off-Road for sending this stuff out to me to test. I couldn't make videos like this without their help. They're also the ones that sent me this really cool rally style fairing. If you guys missed that video, I can put a link for it down in the description. So I'm gonna get the front of the bike drop first, and then we'll move to the rear. So now I've got the front dropped as much as I possibly can without doing anything to the internals, and I did that by just loosening all of the triple tree clamps and sliding the fork tubes down as low as they could possibly go. So in other words, the fork tubes are in the same spot, the bike itself just sort of dropped on them. And with that in its lowest position, I will go ahead and work on lowering the back. I'm gonna remove this bottom chain roller, which will essentially just allow me to drop the chain out of the way so I can pull that bolt out wherever it is, there. So with that out of the way, you can see the chain drops quite a bit, and then I'll be able to get that bolt out much easier. I won't run into the chain. So this just sits in there, sort of like that, and the chain rides on it. in the heck is that? The biggest fly I've ever seen. So I know it seems a little bit backwards that I'm sticking a longer link in here to lower the bike, but just keep in mind that the longer this piece is, the lower the bike is going to be. So then similarly, if I was to turn this center portion here, making the link longer, we are again going to be lowering the bike even more. And then, of course, if I wanted to keep that setting, I would just back these two locking nuts up against the center portion and snug it all down. But because of the rather limited adjustability on the front, I'm going to leave this as high as it will possibly let me. Now, it seems like getting anything on this back one is a little bit difficult, or at least the wrench that I've got is, just because the yoke here is too close together to get it in there. So I just backed this up against that and made sure that this didn't spin while I was doing that. Because I've got Loctite in there, I don't really think it should be an issue. Probably a good idea to go back and check all the fasteners that I messed with today after I put a couple hundred miles on. All right, let's get this thing back on the ground and see what we ended up with. Well, that is definitely much more comfy. I can certainly tell that the back of the seat is much more level, or closer to level, I suppose I should say. And to be honest, when I first realized that the front wouldn't be able to drop as far as the rear, I was a little bit disappointed, and obviously we're gonna have to take this thing out for a test ride because we're changing the rake and a whole bunch of geometry here, really. So maybe this will screw everything up, maybe it'll make it a lot better because the center of gravity is low. I won't know until I get out there. But as far as just sitting on the bike, I've got to say I think I will actually like having the back portion of this seat a little bit closer to level, because the last time I was out on this, I found myself sort of stuck in the spot up against the tank and the tank bag and didn't really have a comfortable position back here because I kept sliding down towards the front of the bike. So it might end up being a really nice unintended benefit of this whole thing. But I've got to say I'm not too disappointed with the amount of reach that I have here. If I do sit way at the front here, even without riding boots, I can easily get my foot flat on the ground. I have a 31-inch inseam. I'm about 5'10", and I weigh about 155 pounds. I am sort of shifted off to the side of the bike a little bit, but honestly, I don't even really know that I would need to, and I think the only reason I'm doing that is just because the center portion of the seat is a little bit wide. So I would say this is definitely going to make me feel a heck of a lot more confident on this bike, even though that wasn't really the main goal here. Of course, I'm not saying that I won't enjoy being a little bit closer to the ground. I did almost drop the XR on my dad twice, but the main reason that I decided to do this is because I wanted to see what lowering the center of gravity of the XR would feel like in comparison to that of the DR, because in my opinion, for the majority of riding that I do, the DR just handles much better and feels much more planted and much more glued to the road, which who doesn't want that? Unless I guess you're riding motocross tracks all the time, but personally I don't plan on doing that. Another sort of unintended positive that may have come out of this is the fact that the rake will be increased on the front of the XR a bit, and if you guys are unfamiliar, the rake is essentially the angle measurement from a vertical line drawn straight down in the air in comparison to the angle that the forks are stuck out from that line at. The XR has a little bit less rake from the factory than the DR does when both of them are in their sort of factory configuration, but because I dropped the back of the XR a little bit more than I was able to drop the front, technically we'll have a little bit more rake, which should be actually a little bit better for off-road. And by better, I mean sort of easier to handle. Of course, we won't know that until we get out on the test ride, and I suppose it would make sense to throw a leg over the DR here, and I would say that, yeah, this actually almost feels exactly like the XR. The XR seat is definitely not as sort of rounded, but boy, that feels a lot like a DR650, maybe even a little bit closer to the ground. So earlier in the day, before I did anything with the bike, I stuck a tape measure in a few spots just so we could spot check things after I was done. Top of the taillight was about 41 3/4 of an inch. The top of the signal light bracket on the front was right around 44 inches off the ground. Seat looked like just about 36 with a little bit of squish, and the frame was about 13 1/4 off the ground front and back. Let's see what we've got now. So this measurement specifically is going to be thrown off a bit more because the rear end is dropped more than the front, meaning that the further back you go, the farther the drop is going to be, if that makes sense, sort of like a teeter-totter. About 40 at the top of the tail light. Top of the signal light bracket, we are about 43.25. So I think we dropped about 3/4 of an inch there. Seat height looks to be somewhere around 35.25 at its lowest. And it looks like at the front we really still have, I mean, quite a bit of ground clearance, more so than the DR. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna miss that little tiny bit too much. Only one way to know for sure though, so let's gear up and take this thing out for a ride. I cannot wait to see how this thing feels. Well, I've got to say, man, I have noticed absolutely zero in the way of negative effects out on the road, and man, out on the gravel, I'm almost a little afraid to say it, but I swear this thing feels just as good as the DR. Man, everything seems better. The seating position, the fact that I can sort of sit back on the back portion of the seat, it almost makes me want to lower this even a little bit more, either a half inch or maybe even the whole inch. I don't know that I'm going to do that. Tomorrow I will be headed out to do a bit of testing alongside my buddy Jason's DR at Harrison Hills, which is much more of an off-road test than this is. I mean, this is just gravel, basically. So obviously this isn't an end-all test or anything, but the little bit of off-road that I've done, man, I'm certainly not noticing anything yet. You know, obviously once we get to doing the big jumps at Harrison, then maybe there'll be some issues. But I mean, really, we didn't really lose any suspension travel in the front. I mean, I suppose we changed the geometry a little bit in the back, so that, you know, maybe lost a little bit. But honestly, it's probably not near as much. I would guess, and I don't know any of this. Maybe you guys do, and you can tell me down in the comments that I'm wrong. I haven't worked any of it out mathematically or geometrically, but I would bet that with the inch or so that I dropped the rear, or I guess the main portion of the bike, the almost inch or a little more than an inch, then we lost in ground clearance. I would bet we did not lose that in suspension travel, but I could be entirely wrong. Maybe it's actually the opposite. Standing up, I think, feels a little bit different, more so just because he switched the rocks offset risers that were on here out for the Tusk big bar clamps, and I just did that because I needed the rocks risers for the DR. Honestly though, in a seated position, I actually kind of like where the bars are, and I almost don't want to change them. And if you guys saw that most recent DR video where I swapped the bars on it and stuck them on some risers, I actually had a bar that kind of made me feel a little bit uneasy, almost like this bike. So I then went with a lower bar on there, the KTM bend, where this is the Moto. And I almost kind of wonder if some of what I'm noticing is just that the bars are a little bit lower. Obviously, you know, the higher up you are and the higher up your sort of connection point to the bike is, I mean, it's going to throw things off a bit. And not to say that I think this did a whole heck of a lot on this bike. I think the majority of what I'm noticing here as far as positives or change at all is just the lowering that I did. I mean, obviously that's the most extreme thing. The little tiny bit that I moved the bars back and dropped them, I don't think it's going to matter. But I guess what I'm getting at is it seems like keeping things a little bit lower when you can, of course, for comfort and for you know, ground clearance and that sort of thing. I mean, not like it doesn't make sense. I mean, if if you guys have ever looked at anything that is supposed to be on a racetrack, it's certainly not high off of the ground. Even the UTVs that they race, I'm pretty sure they're dropping them, because the lower center of gravity you have, the better, really. And for as many times as I had to hop on and off of this bike today when I was shooting all the clips of me riding around, oh man, I can tell you already, I like this so much more. And I think a lot of people kind of get it in their head that everyone's a low seat height because they're scared off-road. And I would 100% say that if you are looking at a bike for your first bike or your first off-road bike, you should get as close to the ground as you can for a seat height. Don't do something silly like I did and buy a 460-pound KLR that is too tall for you. The best way to be comfortable on a bike is to be able to reach and touch the ground if you make a mistake when you're just learning. There's absolutely no reason that your ego nor anyone else's should talk you into a higher seat height, especially when you're starting out. But even when you're just out for a ride, I mean, I've never wanted to sacrifice ground clearance, and that's always why I've sort of stayed away from lowering bikes. But who wants a bike that you almost drop every time you get off it? And yeah, I know, you can figure it out, you can do stretches, that sort of thing, but we all only have so much time in the day. I would rather just be able to get on a motorcycle and then be able to get back off of it at the end of the day, or to see the scenery or to stop and talk without dreading, having to swing my leg up that high, or to possibly have the side stand in the wrong spot and tip it over because you're not able to get the ground as good as you should be able to. I'm all for improving skills and, bettering ourselves so we're safer, better riders out here and can have more fun. But, I mean, at a certain point, what is the point of having a bike that you're uncomfortable on? It's just silly. And if you can lower it and actually make it feel, you guys will have to check in after I get a few more miles on this thing, but I think right now so much better. I think a lot of it is just the fact that the seat is not at such a steep angle. I can actually sit on the comfy part of it, and I just love it. I'm so happy that I did this, and I never thought that I would say that. And I don't want you guys to hear the rant about low seat heights and think, he just really just wants to be that close to the ground. I've ridden bikes way heavier than this, way bigger than this, on insane single track, and I will come right out and say that it was dumb, but I'm not afraid of this bike. I never was. It's just inconvenient, and if I can make it ride better and make it more convenient, why would you not do that? Especially for, a couple $100? As much as I like all the other stuff that I did to this bike, man, this has got to be one of the, how do I say that? I guess probably biggest improvements in overall rideability, I would say. There's nothing bad that I can say about it other than the slight loss of ground clearance. I love it. I love my lowered XR. It makes it just seem so much better of a bike for what I want to use it for. And I guess we'll have to take it out on the highway a bit, but from the little bit of kind of shake testing that I've done at sort of slower speeds, and even on the gravel too, here's some gravel. Hopefully that storm's not coming this way. I don't think it is. Cool scenery though. On the gravel, okay, yeah, now I picked the worst gravel. This thing, it used to feel really uneasy, and I can definitely tell the waypoint's shooting around a little bit on the sort of ball bearing parts of this. But boy, it sure does feel a lot more glued to the road, just like the DR did. And, I think some of that has to do with the lower center of gravity, but I honestly think that some of it has to do with slightly increasing the rake and dropping the back. There is actually one thing that I guess I noticed, that having the swing arm at sort of a less of a steep angle has changed, and that's the fact that it won't exactly wheelie quite as easy as it used to. But if you guys remember when I did the 0 to 60 test on this, I couldn't even do the 0 to 60 because it kept pulling the front end up off the ground. And there's lots of stuff that I plan on doing to this bike as far as performance mods go, so I'm not at all worried that I lost my wheelie ability. It's still, there's a deer standing in there. It's still more than easy enough to get the front end up with just a little bit more effort. Really not a big deal, and certainly does not outweigh all the other awesome improvements that I've noticed so far. I don't think I ever actually got to finish what I was saying before, but when I'm standing up now, because I lowered the bars and brought them back a bit, they do feel a little bit lower than I would like, and a little bit closer to the pegs than I would like. But I think I'm just going to try to leave it, at least for tomorrow, and see how that goes. Now, one thing I have noticed is that the side stand, I think, is as low as it can go. Maybe you could remove one of the screws that I put in there and drop it another hole. But, I mean, it seems like with the bike lowered an inch in the back, I mean, it's already about as far over as I'd want it to be. I would think if I was to raise it back up again to the stock size and leave the stand on here, I think it would be leaned over a little bit too far. So I don't know if I misunderstood the listing for this or what the deal is. I guess I'll have to talk to Hemisphere about it and see what they say. And I can put a note just on the screen here. Turkey? I sure can't see a reason why I'd ever want to switch it back though, man. This thing always felt so, I don't know, just ready to fall over or something. I don't even really know how to describe it. The DR just always felt so glued, and like you could do whatever you wanted, and the tires would just stay planted. Where this, it was like a building ready to tip over, and I only lowered it, what, an inch in the back? I don't know. I don't understand it. Maybe some of that really is just the rake. I don't know. Whatever it is, I like it. Of course, we can't have an XR video without filling the tank up, and one thing that I've really come to like, and I think we'll definitely enjoy, is the fact that when I have to sort of snake around in, kind of tight quarters, I can make way tighter of turns without, again, feeling like this tower is going to fall over, because, well, it's not so much of a tower anymore. I swear, if back when I bought this bike, you told me that I was going to be this excited about it being lowered, I never would have believed you. 91, thank you very much. Hold the corn. 73.4 miles. I'm glad I didn't get on the highway. I'm pretty sure that would have shut off on me right about the time I got to 70 miles an hour. Does everybody know that gas will eat your tank? Make sure you don't leave any sitting on there. Well, not your tank, your paint. There's so many motorcycle facts that I've gathered over the years that I don't even think to mention to you guys. Forget that not everybody's been riding for as long as I have, and mostly the reason I forget that is because I forget how old I am. Do you guys know how old I am? How old do you think I am? Would you like a receipt? Yes, I would, because it's supposed to be a business expense, except I'm a horrible businessman. Can I have it? Thank you. See you next time. Did I not hit yes? Oh, that's so much easier to get on. A little rolly dash. What was that? 1.697 gallons, 73 or 74 point something miles. So what is that for gas mileage? Yeah, there it is. Not good. Well, no wonder it didn't shut off. Some goofball left it on reserve last time he filled up. Alright, well, let's hit the highway after a few loops here. Oh, yeah. This is just how this bike is meant to be, I think. Unless you're planning on riding motocross tracks with it all the time. Just so much better of a road bike. So 75 indicated on the dash, probably more like 70. In reality, just sitting here kind of up against the tank, feeling, I would say, pretty good. If we have to do some lane changing or want to drift around in our lane a little bit, boy, that does not feel like a giant motorcycle that's not meant to be on the freeway anymore. It just feels like a motorcycle. I am noticing that I have to put a lot more input on the bars to get the bike to lean over, where I think before I could just kind of lean, and I suppose it sort of still will follow, but it doesn't seem like it leans as much. Yeah, certainly no ill effects yet. After the truck passes here, I will give the bars a little bit of a shake just to sort of replicate some amount of move. So I guess we'll just do it. We'll do a quick lane change. Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of dancing going on there. If I give the bars a little bit of input. See me here? I hate riding around people. Yeah, if I accidentally kind of over-exaggerate my shift and give the bars a little bit too much input when I'm doing the clutch, I mean, it does break loose a little bit and start to wobble, but I mean, I'm doing, like I said, 75 indicated on the dash, so that's kind of going to happen on just about any dual sport. Definitely enjoying my wind protection, that's for sure. And the nice part about having that seat a little bit flatter is I can sort of scoot to the back a bit and not be so high up in the air, so I can actually hide behind my shield, which is definitely more comfortable from a wind protection standpoint. Slide in behind Grandma here, and I'll slow it down to 70 indicated. And now, how about a little bit of a wiggle? Stuck back on the back of the seat like this, it brings itself in line real quick. What if I scoot forward? Which really, that is where your weight should be. Oh yeah, the further I go forward, then it really wants to dance. So yeah, as long as I'm sitting on the back, I mean, it's way more stable. Yeah, definitely. So I would say you definitely want to be sitting on the back, and if the seat is angled like that, that makes it hard to do. So man, there's just one more positive. This bike is even more comfy now on the highway because of this. I like this. Well, blown away might be a little bit too much of an exaggeration, but extremely impressed and surprised, I think, is not. There is very little that I dislike other than the small, minuscule amount of ground clearance that I lost. I mean, I gained so much in contrast to how much that little bit is going to make a difference, and it honestly probably will not make a difference at all. I will probably have to hit Hemisphere up for their skid plate, now that I am a little bit closer to the ground. That extra ridiculous amount of ground clearance sort of makes me feel a little bit better, where now I guess I am feeling a little bit exposed, but I cannot think of any situation where I would rather have the back of this bike higher up, other than, again, a motocross track. I mean, even the single track trails that I run, I mean, this bike still has more ground clearance than the DR, and it has way more ground clearance than the KLR and the Tenere that I've put on the most amount of insane single track miles on. So, I mean, of course, stay tuned. You know, keep up with the videos before you buy this if you're concerned. But I would be very surprised if I find any issues with this, other than possibly bottoming it on some really big jumps. And that will be the next video that I go out and film with this bike. So stay tuned for that one if you're interested in some intense off-road testing. But for everything that I hit today, I absolutely love it. I couldn't be happier. And I think with the goal in mind of turning this into an adventure bike, or something that is better than an adventure bike, because you can ride on the highway with luggage and then unload, set up camp, and hit single track. I mean, what could be better? It's better on the highway, it's better off-road, it's easier to get to the ground for me now. It's just much more comfortable to get on and off. I wish I had a mic to drop. I don't know. It's perfect. I love it. I think maybe we will test what it feels like when I completely lower it to the full 2 inches. That'll be maybe a couple more videos out, but I'm just kind of curious if that will give me any negative effects, or if it will maybe even bring out some more positive effects. One being that the seat will be even a little bit flatter. If you want to pick up this stuff, I'll put links down in the description. The Hemisphere stuff is not an affiliate link. They did send me the product to test, but I don't make any money if you go and buy one. But the links for the stuff is down in the description. And of course, there's lots of links to the other stuff that I use in my videos. And of course, after you click on those links, if you buy anything, it helps me to continue making videos like this for you guys. It is a big portion of the income for the channel. And seeing as this is my only job now, which I definitely have to say thank you to everybody that uses my affiliate links, as well as my channel members. Thank you guys so much. I am so grateful and so blessed to be able to do this for a job, and I'm loving it. So thank you guys. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the videos. Thanks for watching. Take care. Stay safe. Stay swanky. Get out and enjoy this beautiful world that God created for us. Any chance you get. Catch you guys next time. Ride safe.